we got a huge order that was going to be our first full truckload of beer that we were so excited about. And like most of our orders of beer were like one pallet at this time. And right before that went out, John kind of grabbed me and was like, I don't think this is our best beer. He's like, I want to dump it and tell them we'll have more beer ready for them in 3 weeks. At the time, like at face value in our bank account, we literally couldn't afford to make that decision. And we did. And we just started crushing beer cans.
Well, welcome to the Stay Curious Show. I'm your host, JW Wiseman from Curious Elixirs. This is the show where we examine the intersection of business and culture through a sober, curious lens. So excited to have Bill Shufelt, the co-founder of Athletic Brewing, here today. Bill, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Great, thanks, John. Thanks for having me on. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. And are you calling from Athletic HQ in Connecticut?
I'm in Milford, Connecticut today.
Awesome. And, I think that you've done more for the Sober Curious movement than I think perhaps any brand out there. The way that Athletic has taken the nation by storm is truly transformative. For, a brand like Curious, we've been trying to do the same thing. We share the same mission, which is to transform culture and make it so that people that are drinking less or don't drink at all have an amazing option. Like, what was the impetus for you to start this in the beginning? Like, when did you first notice? What was the moment that you noticed, like, wow, I need to change my relationship with alcohol?
Thank you so much for the kind words and having me on. Honestly, it was just born out of my own lifestyle. I think there's a lot of factors at play. It's like the societal trends, and like part of that was going on inside of me, and part of that is just in the world too. If you think about the backdrop to everything 20 years ago, no one had phones in their pockets. Like work ended at 5 o'clock and stayed at the office. It didn't really follow you home. If you were bringing something home, you were usually like printing it out or on email, but like your phone didn't have email. Plus,
Right.
like health information. Like, where did you get health information 20 years ago? It was from like news articles, TV ads. So, like, phones in the pocket, fitness wearables, like things measuring your health on your body. All this health information, podcasts, and everything is like very new. So, there's a lot of big societal trends behind. So, I can't claim to be like the insights that I had on my life are like in hindsight very obvious. But I was just like a very average, busy person. I'd like to call it a serious financial career. I was 6 months from getting married, and I was just always go, go, go. And I had like 3 work dinners a week, then social things, and I loved beer and good food, and I loved being social. But I also realized alcohol was kind of a like fairly low ceiling on a lot of important variables in my life, and health, family, like quality time, um, sleep, work productivity, fitness. And the funny thing is, all these things are getting more important to me, not less important to me. And alcohol was this ceiling or barrier to getting better at a lot of things in my life. And
Mm.
so, about 11 years ago, I decided to stop drinking. And really for all those lifestyle reasons. And immediately it was like this virtuous cycle. It made me more productive at work. I had no off days for hangovers. I was getting better sleep. I was eating better. I was working out better. Um, more mindful time with friends and family. I was always present. And so like I had this really nice change and experience going on in my life. But then I started to like share that and say, well, but the one thing is, I love being at bars and restaurants. I love a good meal. I love socializing. I love work dinners. I have to be out at work dinners probably 150 times a year at my old job. And it is amazing how bleak the adult beverage market was 10 years ago. And so I started to share that experience and with not only friends and family, but colleagues and my wife. And almost the universal response was, yeah, I wish there was something also. But like no one was doing anything about it. And finally my wife was like, you should fix that. And I had like never considered myself an entrepreneur at all. But that's kind of like the backdrop in my lived experience was like I think I was swept up in this huge societal mega trend happening. But like me and probably like many, many other people out there, whether they realized it or not, we're bumping up against the total absence of like moderate options at the time. And I think that's probably where entrepreneurs like yourself and me kind of stepped in and realized that, I really want this. And like, I want it so bad that I'm actually going to do it. And so, yeah, the wheels started turning slowly at first. And it's really been a lot of fun since then. I never fashioned myself an entrepreneur whatsoever.
Yeah, and now you find yourself as one, and it's like, wow, that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, doing things I never would have thought, working on things, from like finance, legal, HR, production. About 100 feet from here, we have a 150,000 square foot warehouse with like 800-barrel tanks. And I can't claim to be able to operate any of that at the scale it is these days. I walk around and I'm as supportive as I can be. But yeah,
yeah,
never
it's
thought that.
that's wild. I've seen photos from the inside of your warehouse, and it's giant, just like floor to ceiling, the cans, like the ones that are in behind you in your background. Wow, it's epic the scale that has happened. When you were, I've heard you talk before about um meeting with different, brewers and everybody writing you off, and having to hear no so many times. And then you finally found, I think your co-founder, who is a brewer by trade. And how did that connection first happen?
Yeah. So John Walker, our co-founder, incredible guy and even more talented. It really came through a lot of rejection, kind of like everything in this business, like literally everything we've tried to do ever and still try to do that's new to world is just met with a ton of rejection. And it's probably for the best also, because if everyone's telling you you have a good idea or it's going to do, like, it's probably not a good idea. And so there's got to be that tension. But yeah, I resigned from my job, and like most businesses, I thought we'd be able to tap into contract manufacturing and like the industry that already exists and a lot of the infrastructure. And it turned out not only is no one interested, but really the necessary infrastructure didn't really exist to where we needed it to be. And so that was a big pivot, John and I, to like pivot and actually build it. But in hindsight, I am thankful for every no we've gotten. It's like caused introspection and us to learn more about our business, get better at what we do, and then many times like build it from the ground up too. And it's not only like breweries, but like how we market our beer. I've stood at a lot of sampling booths and gotten an incredible amount of rejection from customers themselves, which makes me realize like how I'm talking about it didn't make sense to them at the time. And I have to like
Mm.
change how I get them to get the beer in their hand, because I know once they have the beer in their hand, they're going to love the experience. So, which I might use that as a segue to crack a beer if that's okay.
Yeah, what are you drinking
Um,
today?
so I actually have one of our limited releases. It's called Birra Chiara. It's an elevated Italian style pilsner with Italian hops and like a European malt character to it. Like we have a lot of fun, like summer IPAs, fruited sours, seasonals. I think we did 4 different radlers this summer of like, blueberry lemonade type radlers and things. And I've been crushing those all summer. As we head towards the fall a little bit more, like there's like occasions where I'm really craving like a more delicate, clean pilsner, or into like Oktoberfest styles too.
Nice. I love that. Well, I'm going to pour some of our Curious number 7 here, which is our
Awesome.
Flight 77, our champagne cocktail. So, cheers to you.
Cheers.
It's really
Thank you.
cool to see how you've been building this business. And when you were first getting started with John Walker and everything, can you tell us about one of those moments, or did you ever have a time where you thought like, "Oh man, this might not work out"?
I'm like probably too delusional for that. I was just like so I had like burned all the boats, so like I kind of had to keep going forward. I would say like there was a moment really early on where I was in the midst of needing to pivot the business model to building breweries and doing everything from the ground up, that I did kind of find myself in an alley where I'd been going down this what I thought was a road, and all of a sudden it turned into an alley, and it seemed like I had no options. And um, I like reached out to my brother and was like really talking through that and sharing it with him, and he was like, "You know what? Let's go skiing for the weekend." And we went. so he actually recommended we go skiing to the Pacific Northwest, and we went skiing in the Pacific Northwest for a few days and saw like 20 breweries while we are up there. And he was like, let's just get you a change of scenery and we'll eat a bunch of good meals at good breweries and see where that takes your thought process. And like actually like setting foot in breweries, I think made me realize like I should actually just build a brewery, and that'll let us focus on our own quality. So I think that was like a tough moment that found a good solution to. I I
I
mean,
get
I think one of the bleakest moments of our business is, we did not have a lot of access to money. It was very tough to raise capital to build our first brewery, and we were running on shoestring budgets, examining every dollar. Like our first forklift that we bought, I must have analyzed 10 different used forklifts and bought the equivalent of a forklift with like the car equivalent would be a car with like 370,000 miles on it. And so we were like trying to make every dollar go as far as it could. And then we got a huge order that was going to be our first full truckload of beer that we were so excited about. And like most of our orders of beer were like one pallet at this time. And right before that went out, John kind of grabbed me and was like, I don't think this is our best beer. He's like, I want to dump it and tell them we'll have more beer ready for them in 3 weeks. I'd rather like dump it and remake it. And he's like, this is how I want to run quality. We're never going to send out beer that's not our best. And at the time, like at face value in our bank account, we literally couldn't afford to make that decision. And we did. And we just started crushing beer cans and told that truck like we couldn't load it and called the customer. And we did eventually get that out the door a month later. But yeah, it was like a really painful quality decision. But I think decisions like that and like sending that message to our team that like Bill and John care about quality more than anything financial. And I say team, like we had 4 total people in the company at that point. But I think that was a big moment for us, is like really putting our foot down about quality, that like we're never going to make any compromises there.
That's defining. Yeah. I mean, and I think it's so important to let people know that. And that's, I think, one of the things that separates, brands like Athletic and Curious from all the people that have kind of come out since we were kind of doing this before many other people were doing it. And we're obsessed with quality. We're obsessed with making the world's best versions of these beverages so that people can have something
Mhm.
quality every single time they have it. And it doesn't mean that every single person out there is going to enjoy Curious or enjoy Athletic, but most people will be able to find a flavor of Athletic that they're really going to like. You know what I mean? Like if you're a stout person, you've got something for that. If you're a hazy IPA person, you've got something for that. If you want like Cerveza Atletica, you want something like a Mexican style lager, you've got something for that. But we don't have to be all things to all people. We just have a good flavor that's the best, highest quality. And that is the through line for all of these things. And I love that about, both of our brands. It's one reason why I wanted to have you on the show, is because you're doing it so well, and I'd love to hear from you in terms of like how you thought through working with your first kind of like on-premise accounts. What was that like in terms of like, what was the first moment where you had an account that you sold into that you were like, oh, wow, this is really working. Like, what was that account? Where were you? What was the scene?
Well, I would love to tell you that everywhere we put beer, it flew off the shelves, and we like couldn't keep it in stock. And it was we did a lot of hand-to-hand education. And I would say some of our best accounts, so I think a great example is uh Ted Kenny, who's the operator of Top Hops in New York. They used to have this amazing bar on Orchard Street, which is now closed, but they have in the Essex Street Food Hall, they have a great spot there. And but like a number of bartenders in New York who turned into being our best accounts, like very shortly after, like we did get no's from originally, but we knew they loved good beer. And so we like kind of hung around and kept pitching it and shared different kinds of beers. Like the more, like if you do the education right and the product is actually good, usually you end up getting that call back. And, a lot of times it would come 2 to 3 weeks later, it'd be like, hey, those beers you left around, I actually found myself drinking them quite a bit. Or it's like my favorite lunchtime beer, or our staff is drinking a ton of it, or weekday customers love it, or if it's at restaurants, like sometimes one style would really jump out, which I'm sure you've seen over and over again. Like at say high-end seafood restaurants, our upside down golden tends to like really pair really well with a lot of the menu. And people would either like get to that style or like just find themselves drinking it, and they'd call you back like 2 or 3 weeks later and be like, I get it. They're like, will you come back? And some of those people, and like hat tip to Ted for sure, and Ben from As Is on the in Midtown West, a great beer bar. They were some of the first people to take kegs of our beer. Like I used to self-distribute kegs in New York City. So I'd load up our company van and drive all around New York. And they took kegs very early on from Athletic. And they very quickly, I think, turned into some of the best turning beers because the occasion base non-alcoholic beverages speak to is just so much bigger than the alcoholic base of occasions. And there's so much competition for the alcohol set of like very limited occasions. So say there's 100 brands competing for those 2 nights a week that are like really big alcohol nights a week. We have this one brand over here that's selling a lot of beer to people 7 nights a week. Like overall, the velocity ended up being really nice for those kegs we placed. So almost at any retail placement we've ever gotten, it takes people a while to realize, oh, there's something new on the shelf there. Oh, this is a totally new product and category. And velocity kind of trickles out, and it's like a building snowball rolling down the mountain. We typically see velocity pick up 3 to 6 months into a placement. So I won't lie. Sometimes our early placements in Connecticut, I was going around on Sunday afternoons and clearing out leftover 6 packs at some places.
Yeah, no, it's real. I mean, you got to grind it out sometimes, especially in the early days. How many people are on the team?
So about 250. So
Wow.
we ran for quite a while with 3, 4, 5 teammates. Then we started to build our manufacturing more in Connecticut. So we launched in May of 2018. We finished 2018 with 6 teammates, probably like 2 in sales, 4 in different like brewery functions, including myself. And then 19, we ended with 26 as we like kind of scaled Connecticut and got out to market. 2020, we ended with about 120 people. So
Wow.
yeah, through the pandemic, we bought our first brewery in California and about 5x the team during the year of 2020, which was a really weird year to be sprinting. Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I mean, we saw just phenomenal growth during 2020. It's interesting. It's kind of like a bifurcation in terms of like drinking habits. Some people drank a lot more during the pandemic, and then some people drank a lot less. But of the group of people that were drinking a lot more during the pandemic, a subset of those, toward the end of 2020, were like, I can't keep doing this. I need to drink less. So some of those broke off and joined the people that were already like, hey, I'm going to take this time to do a reset. And so 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, now we're into 2024. Every quarter is just going up. I feel like we've got a generational moment here in this category. They don't come along very often.
Yeah. And I know we were connected by a mutual fan in 2020, which I think there are many who enjoy both Curious Elixirs and Athletic. But yeah, in 2020, we were very fortunate to have an e-commerce platform too, which it made remote fulfillment very easy. But I totally agree. I think one thing I'm sure all of us experienced in 2020 was like the removal of a lot of variables. All of a sudden, life got much simpler in some ways, where like if you're sitting in your house doing a confined set of things, if you're doing one thing that makes you feel really bad, it's really obvious. Where, in say 2018, going out with work colleagues and having a bunch of drinks, you'd have drinks, but also food. You might be tired and like different things. But if you're like in a very controlled environment, having too many drinks, it's very easy to see the ripple through of that. So, yeah, like you said, we saw a lot of barbelled activity there and some shift in introspection, I guess is what you call it.
I'm sure that like us, you've had a few celebrity fans come out and kind of blow your mind. What was one of the celebrity, moments for you that like they became an Athletic fan and you were kind of like stunned?
One moment that was really cool to me was prior to launching Athletic, I was very aware of Tom Shoes, the founder Blake Mycoskie, And Blake, in many ways, like literally wrote the book on social entrepreneurship and like having a triple bottom line and like not only a business that's a profit extractor, but actually has like a nice place in the world where I'd taken a lot of inspiration from Blake and he'd been an inspiration in the business. And, we'd incorporated a part of our business. Like, so we're a B Corp, we have a big environmental program, we have employee ownership. And, so like a lot of elements that were somewhat inspired by his business. And then all of a sudden I got a random cold email from Blake himself when we'd been in business for about 6 months, which was a very cool happening. Of course, I was in Connecticut and he was in LA. So I pretended to have a meeting in LA the next week and got to meet him in person. And he was generous to invest in our company and help us grow. And so that was like a very cool moment of like someone who'd been an inspiration, like reaching out directly, like kind of blew my mind. Yeah, we're very lucky to have JJ Watt as an early investor in our company as well. So we were connected, and I was very surprised to see how quickly he understood the product and just like what a nice guy he was too.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I love hearing those moments. It's staggering. I remember over Thanksgiving weekend a few years ago, and Neil Patrick Harris was cracking open a Curious Number Five on his Instagram stories, and I was like, "Whoa! Like,
That's
what's going
amazing.
on here? Like, Hedvig Doogie Howser is like having a Curious right now. This is blowing my mind. It's amazing to see
But
how
that,
things change. You know?
I mean, that underlines what a enormous moment we're going through in society right now is, though, where people 10 years ago who didn't drink would have kept that very private. Like ever since prohibition or earlier, people were taught to be private about not drinking, alcoholism, or anything related to that. And um, I I think it's just a lifestyle choice. Like there's not a word for people who don't consume most other foods. Like if you don't like broccoli, there's not a word for you. If you don't like energy drinks, there's not a word for you. Why is there words for people who don't like to consume alcohol? So 10 years ago, it was a very private thing, but it's so cool to see people permissioned to talk about it and post about it. And that just gains momentum. And I think people are gonna, hindsight's 2020, and like the more you get to zoom out, the more you can like recognize the magnitude of moments. But I do think in 100 years, people will look back on this era of time and just see the dramatic shift in alcohol consumption and availability and that happened in this time. It'll probably be a pretty cool anthropological moment.
I think it's for sure will. I mean, we were just talking earlier today about, what does this movement look like in 20 years and 40 years? How do we create the intergenerational change? Because when you look at prohibition, it was kind of a failure. And I think it was a
Mhm.
failure personally because it had a very different set of circumstances. And they were looking at how much alcohol was a villain in so many people's lives. Whereas, brands like ours and all of the people that are sober or sober curious, they're just talking about the benefits. They're talking about the pros that are coming out of this, everything that's changing their life for the better, rather than villainizing alcohol. Because alcohol isn't really like what we need to battle against. It's more just like, how do you want to be as a human? How are you going to live to your fullest potential and have the most satisfaction, the best memories, with the people that you care about? And that's what I love about what Athletic is doing, and Curious as well, because we're just supporting
Thank
people
you.
and we're supporting characters in these people's lives.
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying, in prohibition, that came from the top down. It was mandated, and things were taken away, and there was no choice. And they were left with this lesser than, very compromised experience, and no access to like society's rituals of the past 5,000 years. And I think what we're trying to do is choice exists. If you want it, there's this like very delicious, fun, welcoming set of products coming onto market, and approaching it from like a positive aspirational way. And like 10 years ago there was like no options to do that, but like now you start to have like celebrity support, marketing support, the decision makers, and like the, I don't know what the word would be, but like the authorities, like the bartenders who are like the taste experts at restaurants and bars, like when they support it or talk positively about an option or a non-alcoholic cocktail or something, it gives a lot of social proof and makes those choices easy. And then as people see other people doing it, so there's like the herd mentality and social proof. And so I think the permission walls are falling down. And like that's so much different in like if you turn 21 today versus 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there wasn't a single name brand that you could point to with pride and be like, oh, I want that brand. I saw like there was nobody talking about those types of options. But today, like people can open up a menu and see all sorts of like major flagship labels on there. There's a lot of marketing support. Like the names of the offerings are printed with pride on menus, which is all very exciting. Like, so just by availability, there's going to be a high percentage of people who take those choices.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm gonna try out a new term on for around the bartenders that you're talking about. Maybe instead of gatekeepers, it's taste keepers. I'll
I
try it out.
love that.
See what the internet thinks. But yeah, and that's what we're trying to do too. A lot of it is changing hearts and minds with people in real time, in person. You know, that was very hard to do in 2020. And I feel like this year in 2024, bartenders, general managers, and people are starting to wake up to the fact that, wow, I can make more money and serve our customers better. And this is not detrimental or against anything that I'm already doing. It's additive. They're
Yeah.
just starting to wake up to it. And so I feel like this is the year.
Yeah, I would say the single biggest surprise in this entrepreneurial journey is the amount of occasions that are happening within occasions. So, I I had come in, I had been thinking about the world as people either drinking or not drinking on any given night. Not, I think the word sober is kind of increasingly outdated, where I don't think you have to identify as 100% sober all the time. Like I think it's a very flexible, moderate availability these days, hopefully.
Yes.
But I think the biggest surprise to me is that within the same occasion, people are doing like one alcoholic drink and a non-alcoholic drink and like rotating, which I think the service industry is waking up to. Wow, I can keep people at my place of business so much longer, and they're consuming so much more drinks that they're enjoying. Plus, they're not getting overserved. If like I rotate and recommend these drinks in, and the odds that you have a group of 5 or 6 people and they want only alcoholic options all night for 5 hours is so low that like it's such incremental options.
Mhm.
Plus, in a group of five, once one person stopped drinking historically, it was really tough to keep that whole group at the place of business. So like they were 1 foot out the door the moment one person stopped drinking. And now you can give them an option to like feel comfortable and hang out. So
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see that there are all these different types of drinkers, you know. Like I like
mhm.
to think of sobriety as a spectrum. It's like now people are choosing where they want to be on that spectrum, you know.
Yep.
Like I'm not 100% sober all the time, but I'm like 98% more sober than I was in 2012 when I was running you know, when I was owning a whiskey bar in a nightclub. I was a very different person, but I'm a more satisfied person who has better sleep and better weight
Yeah.
control now and a host of other benefits. So it's pretty cool to see like how people change over the course of their journeys over these, you know, over the change of their relationship with alcohol and with drinking and still having a damn good time doing it.
I will say along those lines too. I think of all the friends I've seen socially this summer. I couldn't tell you for sure whether they drink or not. Like, and I think that's very cool. It's like people just are ordering whatever they want and seem to be having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, I have a couple of curious questions that we like to ask people. And so, you know, are you ready for them?
Yeah,
Okay.
excited.
So, what was your first food memory that you can recall?
Wow. Um, I mean, as a child, I loved spaghetti and meatballs. That could be like maybe Saturday morning pancakes. We always made Saturday morning pancakes. And like, so I was just always trying to make an ever bigger pancake my whole childhood, I think.
Yeah, I love making pancakes for my daughter. It's really fun to do. And so we often do that on the weekends as well. And spaghetti and meatballs, I mean, classic. Who was making that for you?
My mom, yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Here's another one on that line, but what was the first powerful music memory you have?
My mom always loved music in the car, so it was, um, but also maybe church. I played a number of instruments growing up, trumpet for the longest, but I was always in the school band, like, so whatever age group. But I really liked the music in church also growing up, like,
You have an
you
organ?
know, yeah, just like generally the singing and the organ, like I generally just liked listening to it, and I loved playing in the band, and so I've always really enjoyed music, and kind of the more instrumental, the better too. So yeah.
Oh, cool. I love that. If you could interview anyone in the world that you would like to interview, who would you interview?
Wow, interesting. Um, he's been interviewed so much, so I already have like a pretty good handle on some things, but yeah, I mean Elon Musk, I think is going to be someone that history looks back on and is like, whoa, that guy was in just like a historical figure changing everything in the moment. But I'm trying to think of who might be insanely private or historical. Like I I don't know if historical's on limits, but like I would
Sure.
love to hear what like Abraham Lincoln or Ben Franklin thinks about the modern day. I just think these like generational thinkers, um, maybe like a Winston Churchill, but like I'd love to see historical figures comment on the craziness of today.
I'm with you on Ben Franklin. Have you ever read any of the biographies of him? They're incredible. They're
Yeah,
so
it's
wild, you
yeah.
know?
I think the one I read was Isaac Asimov, probably.
Yeah, the Walter Isaacson, right?
Walter
Yeah.
Isaacs. Yeah, Isaac Asimov is the
If Isaac
sci-fi writer.
Asimov did,
Sorry. Yeah,
I would love to see Ben Franklin in sci-fi though. That would be epic.
yeah.
But yeah, the
And
Walter
then
Isaacson was great. I mean, for viewers who may not know this, like this was the thing that blew my mind about Ben Franklin. He created the postal service because he was in the newspaper business so that he could deliver more newspapers. I mean, the postal service was not a thing, it was messengers that you just hire to go and deliver stuff. That was it. And because he was a newspaper guy, that's why he created the postal service, which we still have to this day, so that it can help business, but also help this news get across. It's kind of like, you know, good for everybody and good for business, which is like
yep,
deeply impactful for someone like us, I think, because we're trying to do something that can help people, change culture, and make some money. Like all of these things are good.
for sure. Yeah, he was like a major early like open source guy too. Like so many of his thoughts ended up being righted and published in his lifetime, yeah, and shared. So
Yeah,
yeah,
the original American celebrity, for the lightning rod and everything else. I mean, what an incredible figure. Yeah, he would be great to interview. So that's a great one. And is there anything today that you want people to take away from this conversation in particular, that if people are out there listening and you want them to take away from this?
I think overall the excitement of the moment we're in, there is such an exciting ecosystem and major change happening in society where I think where a lot of people were settling for water and colas during a lot of occasions now can get a really good premium options of all different kinds. And so I would definitely encourage exploration and, maybe walking into a non-alcoholic bottle shop and trying a number of things or yeah, just really venturing out. But I think in every category of non-alcoholic beverages from beer, wine, spirits, like what's happening in non-alcoholic wine is super exciting. And so I recommend exploration, and it'll really open people's just like expand horizons, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the reason, explore people. That's one reason why we call this show Stay Curious, because just we want people to kind of like figure things out for themselves and look to find solutions that work for them, So I want to thank you so much, Bill Shufelt from Athletic, for being here today on the Stay Curious show. Keep doing what you're doing. I think it's incredible. I can't wait to try some of the new seasonal Radlers. Check out Bill, at Athletic Brewing. And where else should they find you?
Yeah, Athletic Brewing is great. I'm on LinkedIn and then our social media. So Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Huge fan myself here.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you so much. And thanks everybody for being here today and for listening in to this incredible conversation with Bill Shufelt from Athletic. And we'll stay curious, y'all. See you next time.
Are you curious?